Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us today for a session by Logitech, Microsoft, and CMR on overcoming hybrid work challenges in the BFSI sector. My sincere apologies for this small delay in starting this webinar, but I'm sure that you will find it useful. I'm Anil Chopra, VP Research and Consulting at Cyber Media Research, and your host for today's session. Now, we'll start off with an interesting panel around designing a dynamic and secure workplace, followed by a session by Logitech around how to overcome hybrid work challenges and some solutions that could actually make collaboration easy. And then we'll obviously end it with a Q&A. So before we start, just note that all participants are going to be in listen-only mode. You can, however, keep sending us the questions through the chat window. We do have a Q&A round towards the end of this webinar. And if you ask some good questions, you might be the lucky winner of an Amazon gift voucher worth 1,000 rupees. So please pay attention. And with that, it's time for the panel discussion. And before I invite my co-panelists on screen, just to briefly set the context for the discussion, we all know that hybrid work arrangements are going to be the norm for most organizations in the foreseeable future. Hopefully, worst is behind us, but at the same time, it has kind of inculcated a culture of remote working and hybrid workspaces across most organizations. For the BFSI sector, challenges are many, including security issues to manage. Sector has to ensure while that happens, compliance security is there, but at the same time, they have to ensure consistent experience to customers and partners and employees. Who will work from home? Who will work from office? Many other questions are there to design a dynamic and secure workplace. And that's what we'll discuss in today's discussion. And it's my pleasure to introduce my panelists. I would request the admin to show my co-panelists on the screen as I invite them. Gautam Datta, Chief Information and Digital Officer at Bajaj Allianz Insurance. Suresh Shanmugam, Head BITS at Mahindra & Mahindra Financial Services. Shashan Shah, VP Business Systems and Technology at HDFC Life Insurance. And Anand Lakshmanan, Head of Sales Video Collaboration at Logitech India. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me in. It has been a little bit of a trouble, so my sincere apologies for the delay, but I'm so glad that you could make it today. Gautam, my first question is really to you. Has hybrid become the way of life now and in the foreseeable future? We are kind of seeing all these information and research, market research. Everyone is talking about that. What are your views?
Well, first of all, good afternoon to all of you, and thanks for having me here. Many of you who do not know, the trouble that Anil was talking about was caused by me. So apologies for all of that. Suddenly the platform started working, so I'm in. Thanks for that. Yes, let's come to the point, which is around hybrid work culture. The phenomena that has started, many believes that it has started only after COVID happened. But fact of the life is this had been there, maybe in a much, much lower scale, in a very particular micro segment of our functions since ages. Okay, many of our tech friends would agree that when we do disaster recovery or some kind of extended drills which runs across 72 hours, many of our admin teams or other teams were accessing it from home. So, bring your own device or work from home had been there. So it's not that it's a completely new thought process. The problem became gigantic, or it became a problem statement only when organization culture got attached to it, with it. When only 0.2% or 2% people were on hybrid, it was not a culture issue. It was just an incident that were managed nicely. But when that 2% suddenly became 40% or 60 or 80%, then I think it is no more a only tech issue. It is also how we as manager, we as employee manage it culturally. That became a big issue. And to my mind, it is here to stay. Hence, all the responsible managers, like all of us, need to look into it from that angle very clearly. We have to probably understand whether this gets embedded with our social cohesion. when I say that, let me give you one or two examples. There are funny belief that people who are working late hours at office are very hardworking, and people who are not coming to office may not be actually working. Now, this is culture issue. This is not backed up by data, right? Uh, or if I have 100 people, member team, and all of them are working from a diverse geography, do I have a process in place to be able to actually control the output part of it, or actually measure the output that is generated by 100 hours? Or am I still going back to the old input-driven control to understand how is the process running? Okay. So these are the challenges that I see hitting all of us every day, and we all must be working on each of it to manage it, because we understand this is here to stay for some time, if not till eternity. This is certainly here to stay for some time. So that's a big answer for your small question. Good for me to warm up. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Gautam. I think very interesting answer that remote working has been there, but I think the pandemic just gave it a boost. And I think it's more about the process. How do you really measure? Do you have the the mechanism or the process to be able to measure? If somebody's working from outside, how do you really measure their productivity? So that's a good point, which actually brings me to the next point to Suresh. So how do you really, make such a hybrid environment work or make it inclusive, where, employees, whether we're sitting in office or working remotely, they get the similar experience. And as a manager, you're actually able to manage the two equally well.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, apologies for the delay due to since we are also traveling for some programs connecting from there, it was slightly difficult. Patience to Mr. Anil Chopra, as usual, taking things calmly and still putting things back to form. Thanks to all. And coming back to the question, really, no, it's like it started with prior to COVID. It's like more of a BC and post-COVID, it's like an AD. That's the way now people see suddenly things transformed with the kind of expectations set part of the technology. But surely the people's point of view, it's enormous, because we bring it out as per 31st March 2021. We can see majority people working from home and trying to take as much as more towards the kind of COVID effect, but they are trying to leverage a lot more in terms of customer and taking that customer related kind of options, which was more familiar, and trying to make it out. But surely the business was a big different task when it comes to rural India in terms of that operations, which people try to continue. But since given an option, like since we try to do similar things even during normal online offline model, which was enabling us to get into the same, nothing much difference when it comes to rural India, surely matters a lot. And even post-COVID, surely we are expecting a lot more in terms of digital transformation. But that awareness in terms of people, especially when it comes to technology, was something very unique, and the change was more in terms of getting things very closer towards the people. And the business, both in terms of internal and external, people are able to leverage as much as towards the endpoint, which was very, very precise, where we can see good results in terms of productivity, surely. And again, women employees who are again posted in rural India were able to take that technology in terms of the kind of desired information, which they are able to cater to the kind of business during tougher times. But as a overall productiveness, surely it has its own pace because of the business which is operated at the COVID stage. But surely post-COVID, the kind of transformation, the kind of expectation, both online and offline, is going to matter a lot at the end of the day in terms of transformation. But surely the awareness in terms of security, part of information, security, part of the customer information, when it was what made more business, was more alarming in terms of the expectation set part of the business. But surely in a nutshell, we can see enough in terms of information which was more towards the kind of expectation set part of it. And especially the customers, where we are able to get them into the technology, was very, very difficult even during tougher times, where the kind of platform set like community cloud and other information brought them into the multilingual community cloud, which has enabled them to go closer and trying to build part of the system, both internal and external. It took some time, but at least at the end of the day, it brought as much as in terms of that awareness of technology transformation, and people are able to operate from their homes, where earlier HO means it's more of head office, now it's home to office. Try to bring out as much as information which was very closer towards the customers, and ensuring that kind of expectation which was both internal in terms of business operation and the technology was tougher talks in a given time, but over a period of time it got matured and leveraged as much as which we can see it out as more results. We are able to close accounts on time, we are able to close the kind of business which was set during the month end trends, and the kind of volumes which was handled, part of the customers were good alarming, and the presence in terms of people trying to cope up with the change of information, change of transformation of digital, change of transformation of mobile solution, which was multilingual, which was more appreciable from the people prospect, and people adoption with very less trainings and getting the quality information again back to system, and trying to put back track of information which was month-end volumes, and trying to deliver the solutions were very highlight in terms of the employees, both internal and external, and especially intermediaries like dealers, brokers, agents, brought in as much as transformation with multilingual was enormous. Back to you, Mr. Anil.
Thank you, Suresh. I think rural is quite a story, and I think you've done a lot of digital transformation to be able to bring in and do the training and actually kind of bring on board people so that they can actually, employees can work, customers can also get onboarded. So it has been quite a journey for you, and I think it has worked smoothly, but obviously at the pace of business is what you rightly said. So Shashan, if I were to, carry forward from what Suresh really talked about in terms of digital transformation and, trainings, and what Gautam also mentioned about, how, you have to be able to measure what people are really doing. But I think from a technology standpoint, what should really be the top priorities of IT decision makers while enabling a hybrid work environment? I think you've kind of all been there, done that for 2 years now. So I think priorities must be pretty clear. So what would be your advice on that?
Absolutely. Like the way Gautam said, we were doing hybrid in some extent, but the way it turned overnight is what amazes everybody. So hybrid is going to stay here, but not all hybrid workplaces are going to be the same. How organization adopt or implement this is where the key differentiation factor will come to them. That comes to your point, very important point. What are the priorities as a company or as a technology or an organization we need to take? Since this session is more on the BFSI, and BFSI is an intensive customer-facing sector. We have customers walking in, we service them across the desk, face-to-face interaction. And whenever we are taking any hybrid decisions, we need to take the impact of the customers. Usually, whenever we talk about hybrid, it's about the location, work location of an employee, vendor, and outsourced resource. And many a times we forget the impact of our decisions on how an external customer is going to take when somebody is working on a hybrid model. On the infrastructure side, I would like to talk on the technology first. We need to ensure that the workforce has everything right to succeed, and the organization is ready to invest in a scalable hybrid IT environment. It is able to adopt to cloud-based tools that can easily integrate into an existing infrastructure. You have video conferencing, messaging, document collaboration tool, productive tools such as Teams, MS Office, Google's, etc., which will empower stakeholders seamlessly, not only your internal stakeholders, but as well as your external stakeholders and wherever they are located. We also need to start thinking on and redesigning the traditional workplace. Initially, when the office layout was being built, it was an open sitting layout. Just before the pandemic, we moved towards more of a cubicle-based sitting layout. But now, after the pandemic, we need to be really looking at a flexible workspace that has a practice of allowing desks on an as-need basis. AI-driven, that artificial intelligence-driven enterprise solutions can help organizations scale this up. You can have self-service workplace apps that can enable employees to automatically book desks or meeting rooms and customize it workplace, even get to know where the colleague is sitting, whether he's remotely located or in office, and it really helps them to collaborate to a great extent. The last point that I want to make is from an organization perspective, we need to cultivate a great company culture. We need to start trusting our employees more. Managers need to change their style, adopt to a style that trusts employees to get their job done from anywhere, We need to start empathizing on employees. In fact, one of the major challenges on a hybrid model or a remote model is that it's very hard to build empathy when people are not physically located with them. Many times, remote employees feel that the co-workers or managers are not seeing their full potential. So we need to get away from it. So from an organization culture, we need to move where performance is just based on output. We need to adopt from an office-centric design to a human-centric design, from a visibility-based management to an empathy-based management. I think these are the most key priorities that I look forward to.
Yeah, thanks, Sachin. I think good points that you mentioned. And in fact, as a follow-on to what Gautam was earlier saying, that if an employee is working till 12 in the night in the office, you can see that he's working. But what about somebody who's working remotely? You need to be able to, measure that. You need to be able to trust the employee to get their job done from anywhere. So good that, I think it really relates to that point that Gautam really mentioned. Anand, I think you might want to add on to that, because I think you've been in this space, and if I look at one thing that connectivity really plays a crucial role in enabling or empowering a remote workforce, and how are developments really happening in technology that can enhance this ease of connectivity? What are your views around that? And of course, to add on to what the other co-panelists have said.
Yeah, thank you, Anil. Thanks for giving me that opportunity, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to my co-panelists for sharing some of their experiences. Brilliant points, actually. But the good news for everybody on this webinar today is that technology has come to a stage where it meets almost all of the challenges, it addresses almost all of the challenges that we are facing today. Just drawing upon the last point that was made, which is, people who are attending to a meeting remotely, feeling left out. That's just because they are not across the table. They are worried about whether they are being heard well, their participation in the meeting, the whole experience. Just taking a cue from this, I want to share with the audience here that there are very, very reliable and good technologies today, which the world calls this meeting equity, which is nothing but ensuring that everybody who are part of a meeting, whether they are just across the table in person, or they are logging through one of these cloud collaboration platforms, they get to participate in the meeting equally, right? And technology has made this happen. For instance, we all took this whiteboard that we had in our meeting rooms for granted, right? Before the pandemic, meetings used to happen in just one place. And so all of us used to contribute, people could see the whiteboard. Now, when half the people are logging in through remote tools, how do they contribute as effectively as people sitting in the room? How do they get to see the whiteboard? The good news is, as I said, technology has made this possible. So coming back to your question, Anil, I want to just let people know that they don't have to worry. From the time the pandemic has started, people have gone through different challenges as far as making collaboration easy and effective for their people, and technology has kept pace. There are many, many tools. I'm hoping that we'll have opportunity to talk about some of them during the course of this webinar.
Yeah, thanks, Anand. I think you did mention some interesting developments in technology, especially the whiteboard sharing. It becomes a major challenge if somebody sitting remotely to be able to participate in an equal manner as somebody sitting physically. So something that can be done around whiteboards would be, I think, a useful thing to really have. Gautam, you kind of ended your statement by talking about having a process that can actually measure performance of anybody who's sitting across anywhere, right? They could be sitting anywhere. But so if you want to kind of talk a little more about that in terms of what should you do, according to you, should be the critical success factors for powering such a hybrid workforce that is sitting all over the place, rather than just supporting them. IT has been more about giving tech support to people, but here, since you've already been doing that, now it's more about empowering them, right? So what should be the success factors according to you to be able to empower them to work remotely and not really be ignored, actually be empathized, and, recognized for their work? How do you really do that? What are the critical success factors according to you?
Okay, thanks, Anil. I think a couple of points that comes to my mind I wish to state here. One interesting discussion happening nowadays is how many days in a week should employee come back to office. And that's a basis of initiating a hybrid work model to be discussed. And to my mind, that itself is such a showstopper, such a no-brainer, such a bad or not so appropriate way to address this. Because if your initiation, if your assessment of the situation is how many weeks in a day or how many weeks in a month, then hybrid would eventually create lots of heat, whatever process, service, operation that you run. That's my personal view, but I would love to hear from all of you and audience also. In my mind, what you should do is, there are few type of work which can be done independently with lesser coordination, co-work with many others. Clear case of working from home independently, contributing towards it. Then there are cases of areas where you need absolutely fast hand, very quick coordination across multiple people within the organization. Enabled hybrid. Sorry, I was out of network for a moment. So either that is tech-enabled hybrid option, or it's a work from office as an option. This is one, point number one. Point number two is when we work in an organization, there essentially some kind of culture is in play. Some offices, some organization is very process driven, some organization is absolutely open in terms of its own methods. How are we, as a senior member to the organization, accepting hybrid as a workforce? Not only about monitoring the input versus output, but also appreciating the effort that goes in hybrid work, whether work from office or work from home. That's very, very important. The third part that I wanted to highlight here is how much of effort happens in that organization where a management often reaches out to its employee. It could be about new product line, new distribution, new process, just appreciating their hard work and stuff like that. How do you want to do that? Do you wish to still do it over the virtual medium? Do you think that is good enough? Because it's not only a person who is listening, it is also about the person who is talking. Okay. So all of these three areas, to my mind, builds an extreme important guideline about what should we do in terms of accepting hybrid as a work. So if, in continuation of my last point, I thought I will put up these 3-4 points that comes to my mind. I hope it answers your point.
Yeah, that actually answers, but it raises a lot of, in fact, there's so many questions that you have raised, input versus output mode versus are you willing to accept a hybrid mode? And, if how do you really actually, if somebody is talking, are people actually listening? Should you do things virtually? So a lot of questions actually come to mind, in which case it's important for people to actually accept the hybrid mode of working. And there should be a process by which things should be measured, that, people are actually attending, people are actually listening, there's actually an output, there's a productivity that is happening. I think many of those questions really come to mind on this. So Suresh, I mean, maybe you want to answer some of that, what, Gautam really talked about in terms of when we look at expectations from technology? Is it really able to fulfill? Does it have a role to play to be able to answer some of these questions that organizations have in terms of enabling productivity of a hybrid workforce? Suresh?
Yeah, it's a great question where I can put it this way, saying like the kind of expectation set part of the technology is more than the kind of expectation set part post-COVID is planned and executed. If you see in terms of the kind of segments, like no one we talk about front office, that's where the real transformation has happened, where people are made available to address customer queries and trying to capture the information with there to set it back to the technology. And second is what the people who operate from homes, where they are trying to do more of a back office, which is partly from the regulated related and partly from the kind of information expected part of the back office. That's where the real transformation was very high, and the productivity which we can see was went to multiple folds and trying to deliver as much as they can. And the main areas like IT, HR, where they have two sets of people. One set of people will do more in terms of the kind of development, procurement, and the kind of information which they were doing from office. Now they were doing it sitting at home and trying to connect as much as on that. The kind of expectation set part of the secured information, again, the kind of expectation set not only from the data capturing, from the kind of diversified transformation in terms of roles, especially the people who work only on single particular roles. Now they got into multiple roles, and multiple approval authorities got into some determined different definite business proposals, which was not just on the business, not just on the back office operations, more from the functional kind of expectation set part of it, and especially from the development side, where we were having multiple teams sitting in a big office and trying to develop. Now that has gone with a zero investment of cost, but trying to use the similar available and affordable infrastructure, and they are able to do multiple folds. So some of the areas has given very high potentials in terms of working from home and trying to deliver some productive information, because same development team works from office will have 8 hours, which was defined properly, where every set of people have to get changed. Then only the same machines and terminals are available for other people. But in this case, it was fully diversified and given multi-folded projects were released on time, and they are able to execute it. So productiveness, it has gone more in software, especially in development and a release of information part of it. Again, back office, where initially it was only information validation. Now they are able to generate the MIS kind of information, trying to transform both into the kind of information for internal and external customers. Third, from the business prospect, where people were working more of capturing information and executing business. Now both capturing and executing business in terms of that individual goals were also achieved using that kind of transformation, which is part of it. So I would say like COVID has given a right mix of exploring more potentials using the digital transformation, and right time it has put and it is enabled enough in terms of an ongoing business, where a press of a button, where we can see they are able to finalize and close accounts on time, and keeping the telepresence, again trying to create that kind of business, and the levels were more enormous, and trying to achieve those things on time. Again, data capturing. Initially, data capturing, we have to sit some outsourced team where they have to capture it for some more time, even that year end is closed. Now all those things got balanced out and trying to capture it. Surely digital has got a differentiation in terms of information and capturing information and putting it for multi-purpose, multi-use. So it's I would say like it's a right time where to capitalize more on that, and we can see more productiveness from the development teams and back office operations and the front office business capturing information. Back to you, Mr. Anil.
Yeah, thanks, Suresh. I think good point. According to you, I think digital has really given us a lot of potential, especially to the development team at the back end, and people are actually able to perform multiple roles now, as you rightly said, not just data capturing, but data capturing as well as multiple roles. So people working remotely can now handle more than one role, and the digital has actually enabled them to do that. Is something that you.
In addition to your point, even external auditors were they are able to do using the same data. They are able to do similar things using the technology. Back to you, Mr. Anil.
Okay, thanks. Shashin, do you think there are changes now required to the technology stack to to kind of enable empower employees in a hybrid work environment? Are there changes that you feel are required than what was used earlier?
Yeah, of course, technology, like as Suresh said, technology is the backbone for enabling hybrid model. I'll not talk much about the digital because Suresh has very well covered that section. But the first point when you talk about technology and hybrid is addressing the connectivity and security issues. Secure connectivity must be the most important requirement when it comes to technology. When users can connect quickly and securely, they can't collaborate, they can't be productive. In fact, based on IC3 report, which is a department that looks into the cybersecurity complaints, they've reported that cybersecurity complaints have been 4 times post the COVID-19 pandemic. Complicating the things, every organization will have its own device, access points, uses a different location. Therefore, it's very important for any organization or a technology evangelist to look at a security solution that operates freely, regardless of where and how the user is logging in. Next is finding a scalable solution. In fact, a cost-effective scalable solution. Whenever we talk about technology, there's always a question between a cost and a benefit, and cost is always a concern. In a hybrid model, when some users are logged in at home, some are working at a remote location, some from office. How does a technology consultant or a person predict what's the infrastructure or scale that I need to? How do I know if today, if my organization, there would be hundreds of people or thousands of people working remotely? This aspect of hybrid is very tricky to look forward or even scale up when you're looking at. It seems cost effective by saying that why don't we have employees bring their BYOD, that's bring your own devices. But with looking at the security threats, it's always a less favorable option. That's why my point is it's important for when you're looking at a technology stack to have a hybrid solution in place that's designed for a hybrid work that leverages cloud capabilities and is easy to scale. One of the most important thing, which I think we also spoke, is in the work from home culture. The research or the feedback from most of the organization was that they'd seen a drop in productivity and innovation. So when you're looking at a hybrid model, the most two important things that we have to look is tools to overcome them. Users have to feel connected. They need to have easy to understand system with little training. In fact, that's how Zoom just boomed up because it's so easy for people to, or anybody. My mother could just connect using Zoom versus if I have to tell her to connect to her Microsoft Teams. So they could do their daily task with such intuitive, with less anxiety on what the tech is asking for. Hence, an enterprise app that lets people to record information, collaborate easily, have information about the schedules, have all the bookings in one place. This is what the companies should look at. Um, one of the interesting point that when I'm talking to a lot of my colleagues in the insurance industry, and it's not just insurance industry. I'm sure it's for any of the BFSI sector that we talk to. We need a technology architect that can just adopt and evolve quickly. We have so many legacy systems that when you talk about scaling, cloud, there's always a challenge. How do I connect with my old legacy system? And I know few of my leaders or few of colleagues in this industry who are moving and thinking towards a platform-based architecture. So that's an interesting thing that has been coming up, where tools and technologies can be added. It can be added to an old technology, removed from an old technology without disrupting the underlying system. And this allows a lot of tech guys to take risk, take their decisions by building a more agile environment that the company can look forward to.
Thanks, Shashin. I think, good points that you have brought out. I think, of course, secure connectivity becomes extremely critical because of the increasing level of cybersecurity threats. And at the same time, solution has to be scalable. It has to be cloud ready, which is easier said than done because, there are so many legacy systems that are there to connect to, and that can actually create, a huge amount of issues. So how do you really make sure that, that connectivity is really coming in? In fact, maybe that's something that I'd like to Anam to really talk about in terms of there are if I look at there are multiple devices and software that are being used now for collaboration, and just like there's legacy systems to connect to, there's also going to be interoperability challenges. So how do you really tackle some of that in a hybrid work environment?
Very interesting question, Anil, and what great points Shashin made. Actually, this is the real life problem a lot of customers are actually facing, which is he spoke about legacy systems, right? People I mean, none of us expected pandemic to hit us. So we all were going about life as usual in 2019. My co-panelists, I'm sure their respective organizations invested in a lot of probably collaboration technologies just in 2019. And the video collaboration we all were used to in those days is point to point, right? We never really thought that we have to log on to a software that is hosted onto the cloud and then people would be anywhere, they will connect. So one office to the other office, that's how pretty much video collaboration was defined for all of us. Now the thing is, just 2 years back, people invested very heavily on those systems. So what do you do with them, right? It's just 2 years, 3 years. What do you do with them? I'm sure none of the CFOs are going to be happy if we walk up to them and say, look, technology has become obsolete. The $1 million that I spent in 2019 is no longer of use to me. Give me $1 more million for me to, make things easier for people. None of them are going to be happy. But the good thing is, we can make small changes to our existing infrastructure and make sure that they are reused. May not be for a very long period of time, but definitely we don't have to dispose of them immediately, right? So technology has advanced. There are options available for people who have those legacy infrastructure to make small and subtle changes to make it suitable for the 2022 and future way of working. It will stay good for some more time. The fact is, the way people are collaborating today has undergone a change. One of the facts that we all have to acknowledge and agree to is none of us in our respective capacities in our organization will be able to change the way people have collaborated in the last 2 years and the benefits that they have derived, right? We all have read enough articles and stories about, people going to their native places and place of work becoming one of the key points of joining or leaving organizations, right? So that's the level of ease, that people have got used to in the last 2 years, and none of us will be able to undo that. So what do we do? Good news is, again, options are available without disturbing the culture that we all have got used to in the last 2 years, without disturbing the behavior our colleagues have got used to in the last couple of years. We still can continue life, right? And remote collaboration is making it possible. And Anil, you mentioned a very good point on people adopting different platforms. So, for example, this meeting is happening on Microsoft Teams. I'm sure there are so many of us who have participated in this meeting, and our respective organizations probably follow different standards. The fact of the matter is, we are living in a time and age where none of us can probably succeed on our own. You rightly said, it's a world of interoperability, right? So from a solution standpoint, people like Logitech, for example, are making solutions that work cross-platform. I will cover some of those additional points when I get to speak to the audience again. But that's the good news. Solutions available are cross-platform, and people don't really need to worry about which platform they are going to walk into when either they are the host or the participant. Okay, even now the whole world is returning to office, and there will be situations when we start meeting customers, partners, vendors face to face. There will be situations where they will be using tools and software which are very different from what our organizations are using, and we'll be carrying a laptop which probably does not have that software installed. But nothing to worry. Life will be peaceful.
Yeah, thanks, Anand. I think good, way to talk about some of the interoperability issues and some of the solutions and how tech is actually enabling that. Probably, with that, we'll end the panel, and we'll probably want you to talk a little more about, what's really happening and that is really helping, that can help BFSI sector in terms of overcoming some of these hybrid work challenges, and maybe you want to talk about some of those solutions. So I'd like to thank the panelists. And we'll just have a quick session from Anand, and after that we'll do a Q&A. You request all the attendees to please post your questions on chat if you guys want to get the Amazon 1,000 rupee gift voucher. So thanks, and over to you, Anand.
Thank you, Anil. And one assurance I want to give the audience, as it is, we had a delayed start. and I assure you that I will not bore you with a large, long presentation. I have only 2 slides. Okay. So bear with me for just a few minutes. Okay. And we really are going to touch upon real life challenges that the BFSI sector is facing. As a company that's providing solutions, of course, we have been in touch with many customers over the last couple of years, and they have shared with us, and we just put those things together. So let me share my screen. If somebody can acknowledge that they're able to see, I'll proceed after that. Are you able to see my screen? Anil, somebody can acknowledge?
Yes, yes, it's visible.
All right. Okay. So we spoke about many different challenges, right, in the course of this webinar in the last half an hour or so. I'm just picking up the top 3 which came across common from almost all of them. As a BFSI sector, I think the topmost challenge that they have when we talk about hybrid working is privacy and data security, right? And banking, unlike most other segments, has probably not had the luxury of working from home so much, right? Because of the nature of their business. So even during the pandemic, they were considered essential services, and we have seen our colleagues and neighbors, they're going to office almost on a day-to-day basis, right? That's because of the nature of their business. And this segment, the primary concern for them is privacy and data security. So if you look at the collaboration tools that are available today, for example, let's talk about what Logitech provides, which is the endpoints. Most of our solutions, almost all of our solutions are USB based, which means that it's already working in conjunction with what you already have, right? There is no port that you need to open separately for our solutions to work, which means your IT team is not going to be bothered with new threats, right? And we don't store any kind of data. It's just a camera. You are already using a software for your cloud collaboration, and we are only integrating our endpoints with that. So from a privacy and data security, I want to assure people that there is really nothing that we store. There's zero data footprint. Second, we spoke about legacy systems, the point-to-point video conferencing solutions that people invested in. So primarily banks, they were the biggest adopters of those technologies, right? So what do they do with those investments in 2022? We touched upon it. The good thing is technology has advanced so much that you make small changes, you add some licenses to those devices, and then it becomes friendly to connect to the cloud tools, and then you can have virtual meetings from wherever. And finally, the other point that I want to talk about is, I think traditionally banks and the financial services industry have been the ones that have followed in terms of their own organization, the hub and spoke architecture, which is somebody said the HO is no longer head office, it's home to office. Very nice way of putting things across. But I think prior to 2019, HO was still head office. So there was this head office, which was the central location, and then there were all these branches. And the unique thing about the banking industry was, I think the branches were really lean organizations, extended organizations of this central organization, where they did not have, for example, a large IT team to support, but they were also equally dependent on technology that they had to use in these branches. So the typical architecture and the way the organization was set up, I think itself was a challenge in terms of they adopting technology, because if you just rewind a little back, 2020 beginning, when we all got first used to lockdown as a word and working from home as a concept, our IT teams had to enable business continuity at scale overnight. Thousands and thousands of us working for different organizations had to still continue talking to our colleagues, collaborate with them, and keep the business going, but without meeting each other face to face. So I think this was pretty profound in the BFSI segment. If we limit ourselves to talking about these 3 as key challenges, what is that Logitech as an organization has done to address some of these, right? As I said earlier, from a privacy and security standpoint, we don't store any data. for any of our endpoints to function. Okay. The only data that we need, and that too to enhance the experience, is the device related data, and that too in conjunction with the software that Logitech provides, which people can use, which is a cloud hosted solution, and it keeps track of how many rooms somebody has and what devices are installed in these rooms, what's the health of these devices, whether they are working, not working, what version of firmware, those typical device related data. There's nothing about the business, there is nothing about the customer that any of our devices collect or store. So there is nothing to be worried about on that. And just in case there are some technical people on this webinar who want to know a little bit more, we use even for that cloud and hosted solution where we collect these device related data. These when they exchange information between the cloud hosted server and the software that runs on the network, it's all completely encrypted. Right, so that's on data security. And people spoke about connectivity and video, audio being heavy on bandwidth. Yes, that was the fact some point of time, but things have really progressed today. I don't know if people have really tried this, but we being a video solutions provider, we don't have access to broadband all the time, including my sales team. Several of us are in situations where we go to our customer site to demonstrate a solution we have, and they can't provide us connectivity into their network because we are guests. So all that we do is just enable hotspot on our mobiles. We use the mobile data to demonstrate our video and audio solutions, and they work absolutely fine. So they are extremely resource light as we speak today in 2022, and things are only going to get better. And somebody referred to organizations having to scale providing technology. And there again, it's very important. And all of us were at home. None of us had access to IT teams who could independently come install the software, hardware, train us on how to use it. All of us learned. And I think Shashin made a point, his family was able to download Zoom and configure, and bang, we are having family reunions on Zoom today, right? And that's how simple technology has become. We are focusing on our endpoints to continue with the same philosophy where, most organizations can just ship the endpoints to their employees. They open the box, just plug the cables into the laptop, and the technology is so advanced that the hardware is able to recognize what kind of platforms run on the laptop or desktop, do an automatic handshake at the back end, and make everything easy and ready for people to use. It's so intuitive. There is no training required, absolutely, right? And multi-platform support, we spoke about it. Yes, almost every organization today is using more than one platform. One could be their own standard, and a couple of more could be to ensure that when they have people coming into their office or sending them invites, they're able to log into those meetings. So almost all of the endpoints that we manufacture comes factory certified with Zoom or Microsoft or Google or any of these platforms that are already available in India, and the ones that are going to come, which we are going to see in the next 3-6 months. So multi-platform support is already available and it's inbuilt. Finally, there are solutions that are going to make the remote or the hybrid way of working a breeze as well. And the experience that people would get out of using these devices will bring them very, very close to what a face-to-face meeting is or was. Nothing to replace that, but it will come very close to that. We spoke about the whiteboarding solution, which is the solution that is referred to here as Scribe. There is another solution that we launched during the pandemic, again, because a lot of customers were asking for it, primarily a docking station, which doubles up as a control point for all of your collaboration requirements, which has a speaker and a microphone and all your cables in terms of keyboard, mice, your camera, your monitor, all the cables go into this docking station. So that becomes your central console. You can basically unclutter your workstation at home and have very, very peaceful meetings. So these were some of the things that we could touch upon. With the limitation of time, I'll probably stop with this. But the assurance that once again, I want to give people who took the time to listen to us today is technology is only getting better. There is no running away from it. We have to use technology because, like somebody said, this hybrid is here to stay. At least for the next 3-5 years, we see that not all of us will be going back to our respective offices and meeting face to face in 90-100%. It is here to stay, which means that the earlier we acknowledge and adopt and get used to using technology, it's easy for us to continue doing business easily, right? And for that, whatever we have to do from our side, we are doing. And so, just embrace it. That's the only piece of advice I would have. So pretty much what I had. Back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Anand. You could maybe, stop sharing the screen. Thanks a lot, Anand. I think good insights that you talked about. Technology is definitely ready, and you've kind of given some really good summary of the points of how, how easy things are actually becoming. So good to hear some of those points. But I think, I've been getting a lot of questions on chat from the audience. So probably it's now time for the Q&A. So I will request the admin to please show all the panelists in the center so that we can, do a quick Q&A with all the attendees. So the first question I've got is, how do you really secure the big data privacy of customers working from remote locations, from ransomware or malware attacks, when actually clients are working in a multi-cloud environment? Any thoughts from any of the panelists? Gautam, Shashin.
Well, I'm definitely not the expert, but let me try my luck. When we talk about a big data kind of a platform, it's a very global term. Let me narrow it down to certain data or information asset that may cause problem if it is analyzed by a wrong hand or goes to a wrong hand. For that matter, let's say customer 360 degree view of customer, or your call center audio clips that you are conversing with your customer, or if you are into a business like ours where you underwrite every onboarded customer based on his health or his wealth. This information goes out. Now, these are shared by the customer most often and shared with a trust that it will not be misused. Now, when you are talking about a big data, I am just taking a smaller example of any of these assets need to be extended. Our access of these assets needs to be extended to a third party or an employee working from somewhere else. Now, the process of somebody working from somewhere else has been there for ages. It's not that any of us who are doing every part of our business within our organization. There were outsourcing happening from very beginning. And the process of outsourcing is identify the key information asset in that template and make sure that it is grayed out or it is encrypted or it is masked even before it starts leaving your data center, even on the transport layer or application layer. Now that as a fundamental control is, if it is not there, and then we are trying to build a periphery control to manage this, you always have a little bit of heartburn. You would always not very sure at what point in time it will give you what kind of surprise. So I would always go back to look into the fundamental controls of every information asset mapped through what is important for business, what is important for customer, what I need to protect, and then have a zero tolerance policy around that. Once you have that view very clearly established, then it is a big data or it is some other small little data or some other interface that you need to give it to your partner to assist you in your business becomes far more controllable. I would still caution to all of us that nothing is absolutely risk-free. If there is anything that is called absolutely 100% risk-free, there is almost nothing. There's always some bit of residual risk in running business, whether you run it digitally or run it physically, brick and mortar. Our try is to make sure that it is its minimum level, and possibly we have an alert mechanism or an monitoring mechanism which gives me before it hits the fan. That's broad and view that I would like to put.
Yeah, thanks, Gautam. I think valid point. If you just need to first of all identify what is the business critical data and then have a zero tolerance policy around that. Everything else is secondary. That is the most important thing to really focus on. I mean, if I were to take the takeaway on that, big data, yes, it is there, but ultimately you have to understand what is business critical and how do you really ensure that that is protected. So good point on that. I think very nicely summed up. Now, I think this question is more specific to what probably Anand was talking about. Does it also give option to secure login to the system? I'm not sure what that means, but maybe it has to do with the devices logging into the system. Anand, you wanna
Yeah. So as I mentioned, Anil, I'm also not too sure what exactly this question relates to or refers to, but what I can say is, as far as the Logitech endpoints are concerned, almost 99% of them are USB, so it's absolutely safe. We also provide a software, as I referred to, for organizations to deploy video solutions at scale and monitor and administer them centrally. That software we can integrate with the existing security policies of organizations. For example, it can be a single sign-on integrated solution where people don't have to worry about whether this software sits outside of their security policies and thereby makes them vulnerable or exposes their organization to risk. It is not so. So we can absolutely work with the existing systems that they have put in place, and nothing special needs to be done for deploying our solutions.
Thanks. I think there's another question that is around best practices of how BFSI companies can really build trust with customers for driving high ticket transactions while working remotely. I think it probably has to do more with doing business digitally as customers access business digitally, BFSI company services digitally, and there are heavy transactions to really be done. So best practices on how do you really build that trust so that customers are able to do it. That's how I could understand the question. Any thoughts from the the panel on this aspect of building trust with customers for high volume transactions?
Anil, I can just add 2 bits to what you said. I think when there's a question of trust, it's lack of transparency. Like if somebody gives me a call and says for an insurance policy, send me your Aadhaar or PAN card on an unsecured network or an unsecured URL, that's when the trust factor comes in. So I think to answer Prashant's point, if you have a platform or a tool where you have documents or high ticket transactions happening remotely on a secured platform, okay, it gives you a good significant of trust or a comfort factor with the customer. I'm sure Gautam and I come from the same insurance field, and we do have high level, high ticket transactions or even very secure transactions where it's financial information or a health information which is exchanged. During the pandemic, even the interactions between two parties, that was a customer and the agent, we had to do it on a platform that was governed by HDFC Life Insurance. On the servicing side, if there's anything that the customer wants to share with the company, we ask them to send a URL which is OTP based and options, and then the documents are being shared. So if you have those type of transparent transactions platforms where the transactions can be held, I think that's one of the good practices that the company can adopt.
Right. Thanks, Shashin. I think good point. And in case there is any further point on that, any further clarity, I think audience can ask. But yeah, on the other point about secure login, Anand, I think the person has kind of asked a question. further clarified that, as you share device, the identity is not stored, but then can it be verified that the devices that are connected are authorized to connect to the system? I think that's what the person probably means. He's clarified that.
Yeah, that has been answered as well, Anil. My colleague Ritesh is also on the meeting now, so he has provided the answer.
Okay, yeah. That can be done with UID or PID of the device. Also, it is certified, and these IDs are added to the VC application.
Absolutely.
As you rightly said. Great. So thanks. I think we did start a little late, and I think it was meant, webinar was meant for an hour, and 1 hour is through. My apologies to all the attendees and all the panelists for this delay in starting. Technical glitches do happen. We are living in a virtual world, and we can expect such things to happen. But I would like to thank you all, Gautam, Shashin, Suresh, Anand, for joining me, for all the patience, for bearing with me and staying throughout for this and sharing your inputs. I really appreciate it. I hope the audience also found it very, very useful. I'd like to thank all the attendees for all the patience that you have shown. I really appreciate it that you've kind of stayed till the end of the webinar. There is a feedback form in your chat windows. I'll appreciate if you could fill it up and give it back to us. We'll announce the winners on our portal, where this microsite from where you registered for this webinar. We'll announce the winners for the Amazon gift vouchers there itself. So thank you so much, and I hope you all have a great day and a very happy weekend. It is Friday, right? So have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and goodbye.
Thank you, Anil. Thanks, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. Enjoy the evening.
Bye.